Today we will start with the chapter on liquidation of companies. You all know that a company form of organization is created under the Companies Act, and similarly it can be dissolved, liquidated, wound up only according to the Companies Act. So in this topic we will study that if we want to liquidate a company, then how that can be done. Now, how liquidation is different from dissolution, or how winding up is different from dissolution. Now we say when you stop the affairs of the company and you sell all your assets, realize all your assets and pay all your liabilities, then that procedure is liquidating. And when you have paid all your liabilities, then the name of the company is struck off from the registrar's register of companies, and that at that particular stage you reach what we call as winding up. So first you liquidate your assets and liabilities, and then that is called liquidation. And when your company ceases to be a corporate person, at that point of time you are dissolved and you wind up, you dissolve and you liquidate and you come to an end. So let's see the meaning as such. Now this says Section 294A of the Companies Act 2013. Winding up means winding up of the company under this act, or liquidation under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016, that is called the IBC code, as the case may be. So mainly what you mean by this is that you have two ways. You can wind up under the Companies Act, or you can liquidate under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. So we will now over here understand which will be applicable in what all situations. Let's talk of the modes of winding up. Now there can be two ways of defining the modes. One you can categorize as per this particular categorization, that is, you wind up through the tribunal, or the other option is you wind up voluntarily. Now there are certain conditions or situations or circumstances in which you can go for this mode. If only you satisfy those conditions or circumstances, you are falling under those circumstances, you will be winding up your organization through the tribunal. And if other situations prevail, then voluntarily you can wind up your business. So this is one way in which you can categorize the modes. Sometimes the modes are categorized as the ability to pay debt. You are able to pay your debts, but still you wind up. This is voluntarily. And the other is inability to pay debts. So you are being forced to wind up because you don't have the capability of paying all your debts. So this is also another way of defining or categorizing the modes. So let's go ahead with this. Now Section 270 of the Companies Act tells you in what all situations your tribunal will be applicable. Now before I go ahead, I would like to just mention this, that when we talk of liquidation, or when a company comes into existence, then this is done through the Companies Act. The Companies Act also tells you about the process, and it has got certain provisions of liquidating or winding up. But in between, in the year 2017, some changes were done in the Companies Act, and accordingly, this categorization was installed into it, added into it, where if you want to do it voluntarily, then IBC will get applicable. So in the whole chapter, you will have to combine two things. One, some provisions of the Companies Act and some provisions of the IBC code. We'll combine all those provisions which are required to do certain practical questions, and then we'll see how to go about it. So let's see the first case, that is, if you are going through the tribunal, you are not going into liquidation voluntarily, but rather going through the tribunal. Now when you talk of the tribunal, section 271, now this is 270 of the Companies Act. So we are into Companies Act. In this category, we are into the Companies Act. So whatever provisions are being talked about, they are provisions of the Companies Act. Now let's see what are the circumstances into which you will be winding up through the tribunal. The first is, of course, you are unable to pay your debts, because if you are able to pay your debts and still you want to wind up, you are doing it voluntarily. So the other opposite option against this is unable to pay your debts. So you are not able to pay all your debts, so that is why you are being forced to wind up. Second says, the company has passed a special resolution to wind up through the tribunal. That is, company itself has resolved that it wants to wind up through the tribunal. The third situation can be, the company has acted against the country's interest. So in that case, it will be a forced by the tribunal. The winding up will be forced by the tribunal. Next is, application is being made by the registrar. This application is being made by the registrar, and when the tribunal receives this application, it opines, or it is of the opinion, that affairs, either there is a problem in affairs, managing the affairs of the company, or there is a problem in the formation, or the management itself is fraudulent. So if the registrar of the company applies to the tribunal, and the tribunal is come to the conclusion that yes, the affairs were fraudulent, or the formation of the company was fraudulent, or management itself is fraudulent, in that case, the tribunal can force upon the company to wind up. The next is, there is a default. And default in what? Default in filing your annual returns for the past consecutive 5 financial years. So there has been some default being done in any of the 5 or all of the 5 previous consecutive financial years. In that case also, the tribunal can force you to wind up. Or the tribunal thinks that it is just and equitable to wind up. The situation is such that it is justified and it is equitable to the interested parties, and accordingly it forces you to wind up. Now, over here we have seen the circumstances, and these circumstances can be created, or rather in other words, we are saying who can file petition to wind up. and this petition will obviously be filed to the tribunal. The petition can be filed by the company itself. We have just now seen that you need to pass on a special resolution, and accordingly you will be allowed to wind up. Or you can be having a petition from the contributory or the registrar itself. We have just now seen application is being received by the registrar, or the central government or any state government, or any person which is being authorized by the central government. So these are the people, institutes who can file a petition and accordingly file a petition to the tribunal, and accordingly the tribunal will then start the procedure of winding up. The second is the voluntary winding up, or this is nothing but liquidation as per section 59 of the IBC. Now this section is of IBC. This category is belonging to IBC. Actually, your Companies Act initially was having section 304, under which there was a voluntarily winding up allowed. But from 1st April 2017, the voluntary liquidation was is allowed or can be done only by applying the provisions of section 59 of the IBC. So this amendment has been done in the Companies Act, and accordingly IBC has been installed into it. So if you want the voluntary winding up, in that case that can be done under the section 59 of the IBC code. Now let's see what is section 59. The most important eligibility of allowing you to voluntarily winding up or going into liquidation is, one, that you have not made any defaults. You will be eligible to opt for this voluntary winding up only when you as a company has not made any default or will not made any default, or you can prove that you will not be making any default. You have enough financial capabilities to pay all the debts. And another eligibility is that you are not winding up or liquidating to defraud any person. For defrauding purpose, you are not allowed to wind up under this IBC code. So this is the eligibility involved over here. So if you are eligible according to these conditions, you will be called eligible. You can go for this option only when these two things prevail. Moreover, there are certain other conditions involved. Let's see what are these. Firstly, it says you need to pass on a declaration, and this declaration will be passed on by the majority board of directors. Once they pass on this declaration will be verified by an affidavit which says that the board of directors are of the opinion that either the company has no debts, or if it has the debts, it will be able to pay the debts fully. So you have to prove your financial capabilities, only then you will be allowed to go forward. And this responsibility lies on the board of directors. Plus, it has to say that liquidation is not for defrauding anybody. as just now we have seen over here, it is to be declared by the majority board of directors that they are not going into liquidation with the purpose of defrauding anybody. Secondly, once you pass on the declaration, with this declaration, of course, you will verify and attach this affidavit. Plus, you will attach the documents, and these documents include the audited financial statements. Audited financial statements for either previous 2 financial years, or if before that you are going into winding up, in that case, period since incorporation, whichever is later. Secondly, the report of the valuation of assets, if any. If you have any assets, if the company has any asset, in that case, you need to file a report, attach a report, which tells you the valuation of these assets, and this is to be done through a registered valuer. The next says, within the 4 weeks of this declaration, within 4 weeks of this declaration, you need to call a general meeting and pass a special resolution in it, which says that you can liquidate, and accordingly you appoint a liquidator who is an insolvency professional. Insolvency professional is a professional which is registered with the IBC board, and it has got the rights, knowledge, information to go through the liquidation process for the company, and such a person needs to be appointed as a liquidator for the company so that the company can liquidate under his supervision. The resolution in the general meeting, or you can pass a resolution in the general meeting whereby you resolve to voluntarily liquidate because of either expiry of the duration of the fixed by the articles. You had articles of association, and in that articles you gave a duration that your company will be working for this much duration, and that duration has expired. In that case, you can, within the 4 weeks of the declaration, resolve in the general meeting that you need to liquidate because the duration is over, or some event has occurred again which was given in the articles. Now this resolution will need approval from creditors or person who represents or has 2/3 of the total value of the debt of the company. So you cannot go ahead with the liquidation process just by declaring that you have enough financial credibility, but you have to also get approval from the creditors or any person who has 2/3 of the total value of the company's debt. Moreover, you need to provide notification. You need to provide a notification to the registrar within the 7 days of the resolution or approval of the creditors. So if you on say 1st January you pass the resolution, or of the covered under the first point, and then later on by 10th January you was able to get the approval of the creditors. In that case, we say within the 7 days of 10th Jan, by 17th Jan, you should be giving notification to the registrar of the resolution or the approval of the creditors which you have got if required. When does the voluntary liquidation proceedings start? It starts from the date of passing the resolution. Which resolution? In point number 3, this resolution, not the first one, of the board of directors. So that is the date on which officially you will start your liquidation process, and then you need to apply it to adjudicating authority that the affairs of the company have been completely wounded up and its assets completely liquidated, and then the liquidator will make an application to the adjudicating authority for dissolving such corporate person. So you have to apply, the liquidator on your behalf will apply. Once you liquidate all your assets, once you liquidate and all your assets and pay all your liabilities, then the liquidator will accordingly, when satisfied, will apply to the adjudicating authority, so that the adjudicating authority can go for ordering the dissolution of such corporate person. And accordingly, the next point talks of the order by the adjudicating authority. When the adjudicating authority receives the application filed by the liquidator, in that case, the debtor, the corporate debtor, we call sometimes these corporate person as corporate debtors also. The corporate debtor or the person will accordingly be dissolved from the date of that order, date of the order on which the adjudicating authority gives that order. On that date, you will be dissolved and cease to exist in the legal eyes. So these are the main conditions. These are the main conditions which talks of voluntary winding up under the section 59 of the IBC code. And if we talk of IBC in details, then we can just say that your main purpose of your IBC is, mainly to consolidate your existing legal framework. It basically consolidates existing all the legalities or legal provisions under a single law. There is a single law now for insolvency and bankruptcy. Of course, we are also including the voluntarily winding up, whereby your insolvency is not there, but this code helps you out to consolidate all these situations in which winding up is required, liquidation is required. In fact, this code was, as I just told you, was section 59 of this code was, or other provisions of this code was added to the Companies Act. Not added really, but they were rather taken together to be read together, and accordingly the Companies Act was also amended so that in those situations where IBC is applicable, in all those situations Companies Act provisions were amended, so that now people can go according to IBC and not the provisions of the Companies Act. So let's see what all IBC, a brief points about a few things. The main objective is, of course, I've just told you that to consolidate the existing legal framework so that you can just work around one roof, whether it is due to the insolvency or whether it is you're doing that voluntarily. You can just follow the IBC rules if you want to liquidate. Let's see applicability. It says company incorporated under the Companies Act 2013. Those can be giving an application to wind up under this. The company is under Special Act, and this when we say Companies Act 2013, it includes existing companies. Existing companies are those companies which have been incorporated under the Companies Act, under the previous Companies Act versions. Then it can be inclusive of the companies under the Special Act, some Special Act companies. Then limited liability partnerships will be included. Your personal guarantors to corporate debtors. These are individuals who have provided guarantees to some corporate debtors. Partnership firms and proprietorship firms. Individuals other than personal guarantor, any body corporate specified by the central government. So mainly these are the it extends to all those things, all those corporates or individuals, partnerships, and so on. Now let's see the provisions. The main part of it is the provisions. Now there are of course many provisions, but in your syllabus, that is the BCom honors for Delhi University, especially the provisions which needs to be done can mainly be divided into 2-3 parts, and these includes, the first part includes starting from section 6 and going up till section 32. Now this range from 6 to 32 deals with corporate insolvency resolution process. Corporate insolvency resolution process, which says that you need to initiate this process when the company, say for example, commit a default which needs to be at least of 1 lakh. Any financial creditor, any operational creditor, or the company itself may initiate this process in respect of such company. So you can that is the 3 parties, that is your financial creditor, your operational creditor, or the company itself may start this process. Which process? The corporate insolvency resolution process. Now your corporate insolvency resolution process mainly starts liquidation from the date of admission of what we call as the NCLT, National Company Law Tribunal, application being made. That is, any of these which I mentioned, that is the financial creditor or the operational creditor or the company itself, may apply to NCLT, and accordingly when the NCLT is applied to, then from that date the process, the corporate insolvency resolution process starts. And section 2 of the code IBC code tells you about the time limit for the completion of the process. You need to complete the process within 330 days. Within 330 days from, of course, the start of the process, you need to complete it. Thirdly, it talks of appointing interim resolution professional. Interim, it is, interim means temporary, and it is given in the section 16 of the code. All these provisions are IBC provisions, IBC code provisions, sections of IBC code. We are into the IBC code, right? So sections are of the IBC code. And the section 16 talks of appointing an interim, that is temporary resolution professional. You need to appoint this, and who will appoint this? This is appointed by NCLT. NCLT will appoint a temporary resolution professional, and this needs to be appointed within 14 days from the start of your process, and he or she will then continue till the appointment of the resolution professional is being done, which is a more permanent, that is not really permanent in the sense that it will be staying till the liquidation is completed. So an temporary interim resolution professional is being appointed by the NCLT, and this is to be done within the 14 days from the start of your procedure. And when this section 17 says that when this person is appointed, that is the interim resolution professional is appointed, in that case the management of the company will be done by him or her, and all the rights will vest in him. The rights of managing the affairs of the company will vest in him. Okay, now section 21. Section 21 talks of committee of creditors. Now this is quite important to understand that you need to constitute a committee, and this will be of course be done by interim resolution professional. What he will do is that he will first collect all the information about all the claims, and then once he receives all the claims, then the professional will constitute a committee of creditors, and this committee will consist of all. This will include all your financial creditors, all creditors to whom money is to be paid, financial creditors. Secondly, it also talks of that it talks of voting. You need to be very careful about voting. If your financial creditor or some authorized representative of the financial creditor is there, then your voting share will be proportionate to the financial debts. So the one who is having more debts against the company will have more voting rights. Then moreover, your any decision will be done by voting, and this will be not less than 51% of the voting share of the financial creditors. So 51% of the financial creditors need to agree with whatever is being decided. If the company doesn't have any financial creditor, the committee of creditors will be having it will comprise of such persons to exercise such functions in which can be specified by the law. So you need to appoint somebody who will be taking these decisions under the of course supervision of the professional. Now you have this committee of creditors, and this committee of creditors has got all the rights to get financial information. any kind of financial information which is there in relation to any time, past, present, or any time, and of course it should be related with the corporate insolvency resolution process. And it is the duty of the resolution professional to provide all the financial information to your committee of creditors. So committee of creditors mainly is very important, and all the rights of the creditors is being safeguarded. And sometimes you need to have approval from this committee of creditors in order to go ahead with the liquidation, or how your assets will be distributed, and so on. The next is section 22, which talks of appointment of resolution professional. Now, we say the first meeting of the committee of creditors will be held within the 7 days of the constitution of committee of creditors. So if it was formed on 1st January, within 7 days you have to hold a meeting. And of course this meeting will be called upon by the interim resolution professional. And in this meeting, by a majority of at least 66%, should resolve to appoint a what we call as resolution professional, which is of a more of a permanent nature. So your resolution professional will then now be vested with all the rights to take decisions and manage the affairs of the company, so that the liquidation process can be followed. Section 30 of the IBC code talks of submitting resolution plan, which is eligible under section 29A of the code, and this is to be submitted to the resolution professional. He will examine the resolution plan, and the committee of creditors will approve. The committee of creditors again has got a role in approving this resolution plan, of course with not less than 66% of the voting share of the financial creditors. So without their approval you cannot go ahead with the different stages. So you need to submit the resolution plan to the resolution professional, and then that resolution professional also will have the right also will have the duty to have the approval, that is 66% should vote again in favor of your resolution plan, should agree with the plan. 66% of the committee of creditors should agree with the plan. And section 31 says that finally, in the final stage, if NCLT is satisfied with the resolution plan, in that case it will then order that this plan is final, and this plan then is binding. The moment NCLT approves, finalizes this plan, it becomes binding on the company. And of course from there onwards, all the employees, all the members, all the creditors, any stakeholders involved with the liquidation of the company, they all will have binding of this order, of this resolution plan, which is being approved by the NCLT. The second categorization of sections can be from section 33 to section 54, which talks of liquidation process as such. In the previous category, we have seen different kind of sections which was involved with the starting of the procedure, with the telling you within what days you should complete it, with the having a temporary person to deal with the affairs of the initial stages of the process, then it and creating the committee of creditors, getting approval from them, and coming up with a professional resolution plan. And that plan, once finalized by NCLT, in that case you can go ahead with the liquidation. So let's see the sections of the code. Sections of the IBC code which deals with the liquidation process. Now, section 33 talks of starting with the liquidation. Now, NCLT can pass on the liquidation order in certain cases, in certain situations, like if the NCLT does not receive any insolvency resolution plan within the maximum days, you are not getting, NCLT is not getting resolution plan. In that case, NCLT, if not getting the resolution plan, in that case you can that is the NCLT or any other adjudicating authority can start with the liquidation process. Or if the resolution plan is rejected, maybe for it is not according to the any particular formatting of the code, it is not giving the plan in a proper way, or if the committee of creditors have rejected, in that case, or it is not more than 66%, that can be another situation. Or if the resolution plan is it is objected by the company itself, in that case also the liquidation order can be passed on by the NCLT. Now, order of liquidation of the NCLT will be taken as the notice of discharge to the officers, employees, workmen working with the company, labor, except when the business is running, during which it will be the liquidator who will be taking care of the business which is being run. Otherwise, all the officers, any employees or workmen will get stands removed, discharged. Secondly, section 34 talks of appointment of the liquidator. Now, till now we have been having your resolution professional who was dealing with all the resolution insolvency resolution process. Now, why do we call corporate insolvency resolution process? Corporate insolvency resolution process. It is a process of passing certain resolutions under the situations where you have been forced to come up with the IBC and liquidate yourself, and these sections deals with that part of the process whereby you need to pass on certain resolutions and then go ahead. This part of this whole IBC talks of liquidation process. Till now we have been passing on resolutions and coming up with certain plans and getting approval of those plans. Over here now we will actually talk of liquidation and start with the liquidation process. Of course, it will be initiated as we have discussed just now as per section 33, and then the main person who supports the whole liquidation process is this liquidator. And of course, where the tribunal passes the order for liquidation, your resolution professional shall act as the liquidator for the purpose of liquidation. Of course, if circumstances are such that it needs to be removed, then NCLT will remove it, or any adjudicating authority will remove it. And on the appointment of a liquidator, all the powers of the board of directors the powers of all the board of directors now will be passed on to the liquidator, and it will cease to have any effect, and all of these powers will then vest in the liquidator. So your main person involved over here is your liquidator. Then you have section 52. Section 52 talks of secured creditor in the liquidation proceeding. Now this is important in the sense that if you have any secured creditor is a creditor who has got security against some of your assets. So if you have secured creditor with you, then your liquidation proceedings will have to be according to that fact that there is a secured creditor involved in between. Now, this creditor can do two things. Either it can just relinquish its interest. It is just giving away the interest, and of course to the company, and this is specifically mentioned under the next point, provision or section, that is section 53, in which we'll discuss in details. So if it is according to section 53, it is relinquishing or it is giving away the interest, its interest to the company, or it can realize, it can relinquish or it can realize its security interest in the manner again specified under the provisions of the IBC code. This is one thing. And secondly, if your secured creditor goes for the second thing and realizes the security interest, of course he will have to inform your liquidator that he wants to realize the interest, and then you will, in support of the liquidator, he will mainly identify the asset against which it has, or it has the security, or it in other words, it will have to identify the asset which needs to be liquidated, and the liquidated realized value will be used to pay this particular creditor. So you mainly are identifying, of course, with the help of your liquidator. Now once you, that is the creditor, decides to realize this asset or the security interest, then two things may happen. Either the realized value is greater than what was the debt of this creditor, or the realized value is less. Now if there is an excess, that is the realized value is more than the debt, then the creditor will have to give an account to the liquidator for such surplus, and of course the excess amount will go to the, in the custody of the liquidator. And of course, if it is the realized value is less, say there was a land which was secured and the debt of this creditor was 10 lakhs and the land was sold for 8 lakhs, then there is a 2 lakh shortage. Or if this was rather realized for 13 lakhs, then there is an excess of 3 lakhs. So these can be the two situations. And how this situation will be dealt with and how this situation will be dealt with, both of them are covered under section 53, which is the next section, which is talking of distribution of assets. That is, when you realize this asset 8 or 13 lakhs, then how do you distribute? So let's see the distribution of assets. Now, distribution of assets, the distribution of assets can be seen from let's see from the book itself. How do you distribute the distribution of the assets? Now, this section says that the proceeds of the sale of the liquidation assets will be distributed in the following order of priority. It is defining the order of priority. It is defining the order of priority. What is the order of priority? It says, firstly, you will pay the insolvency resolution process cost, and the liquidation cost will be paid in full. One thing. Secondly, the following debts which shall rank equally between and among the following. Between these, there are equal rights. And what are these? Workmen's dues, and not for the whole life, but rather for the period of 24 months. And these 24 months will be preceding the liquidation commencement date. So the previous past 24 months, in those past 24 months, if you have any dues, the workman dues, this is one which will be taken as having equal rights to the debts which was owed to a secured creditor. In the event such secured creditor have relinquished security in the manner set out in section 52. Just now I told you either he can relinquish or it can realize. So if it is relinquishing, in that case he will not be given any preference, and he will be having, the workman dues will be having equal rights with the secured creditor. So these are equal having rights. So if you have 100 rupees to pay, in that case they will be divided equally. They have equal rights. Thirdly, the wages and any unpaid dues owed to the employees other than the workmen, again for the period of 12 months starting from the liquidation date. Financial debts owed to the unsecured creditors, you will be having unsecured creditors next. So you can see the workmen are given preferences. Of course, your liquidation cost is the first preference. Then you have equal preferences with the workman's dues and your secured creditor if he has relinquished. And thirdly, it talks of the wages. Fourthly, it talks of the unsecured creditors. Again, these will be ranked equally. What are these? Any amount due to the central government and the state government, including the amount to be received on account of the consolidated Fund of India and the Consolidated Fund of a State, if any, in respect of the whole or any part of the period of 2 years preceding the liquidation commencement date. So any central government and any state government. And there is any on account of any Consolidated Fund of India and the Consolidated Fund of a State. So if you have these funds have any dues from this company, in that case this is one. And of course not for the whole history of the company, but rather only for the 2 previous years starting from the date of commencement of liquidation. And second equal ranking is debts owed to a secured creditor for any amount unpaid following the enforcement of security interest. So if if I go back to this example and I say that it is a secured creditor, it is having a security against land, it is having security against land, and his debt was 10 lakhs, and he has decided not to relinquish but rather to realize the security interest, and when the land was sold it was having 8 lakhs as the realized value. In that case 2 lakhs is short. Then this 2 lakhs will have an equal ranking over here. Then you have any remaining debts and dues, anything which is not covered till now, preference shareholders, and then the equity shareholders or the partners as the case may be. Secondly, any contractual arrangement between the recipient under subsection 1 with equal ranking, if disrupting the order of priority under that subsection, shall be disregarded by the liquidator. So any contractual arrangement of whom? Of anybody which was having your equal ranking. So equal ranking is in two categories, one between the central and state government and the debt which was in shortage with the secured creditor if he is not relinquishing, and the second category was between the workman dues and the debt owed by the secured creditor if he have relinquished. So if there is a contractual arrangement between the recipients under section 1 with equal ranking, the contractual arrangement between these people and the company, these people means those who are having equal ranking. If this contractual arrangement is disrupting the order of priority, then this will be disregarded. That is, such contractual arrangement will be disregarded by the liquidator. So the liquidator will go rather according to this distribution, this provision, mainly section 53 of the IBC code will override that contractual arrangement. And the last is section 53 subsection 3 provides that fees payable to the liquidator shall be deducted proportionately from the proceeds payable to each class of recipient under subsection 1, and the proceeds to the relevant recipient shall be distributed after such deduction. So you will have to deduct the liquidator's fees, and of course we'll see how to calculate the liquidator's commission or fees, and this fees needs to be deducted proportionately from the proceeds which are payable to each class of recipient, right? So we will first deduct the fees and then the proceeds will be distributed after such deduction. So this is your main point of distribution of assets. And the last is dissolution of corporate debtor, and it says that if your assets of your company or the corporate debtor, as we can call that, have been completely liquidated, then an application can be made to the adjudicating authority for dissolving the company. And of course this will be done by the responsibility lies, all the responsibilities and the rights lies in the liquidator. So this will be done by the liquidator. Now this was the theoretical part of it, the main starting theory. And if you go through the rest of the part of the chapter, then the chapter is concentrating on two main things which we will be covering in my next videos. One is the statement of affairs and the other is liquidator statement of account. And these are the two main areas in which you are supposed to cover up the practical part. Of course, a bit of practical part has been, a bit of part of it has already been covered under the distribution of assets. So you know that if there is a circumstance where how will you maybe divide the realized value of any particular asset if there is a secured creditor which is having security on that asset. And how will you first give preference to, of course you have been knowing since your school, when you have started with your commerce and have started studying accounts, that of course there is a preference list which has to be followed in the process of dissolution, that you first pay your outsiders, then your preference shareholders, and then your equity shareholders. That preference list is still yet to be followed. But yes, when you're going to the liquidation according to section 59 of the IBC code, you have to take care of certain extra other situations and other provisions also. So those things, that is the statement of affairs, one thing, and the liquidator statement of account, second thing I'll discuss. And we'll do the practical questions also. And these these two topics will not just be limiting themselves to the IBC, but it will also be going into the Companies Act also. So we will have to combine certain provisions of the Companies Act and then certain provisions of the IBC code, and accordingly come up with these two things. So that's it. If you have any queries, you can just write your queries in the comment section. Thank you.